Today's episode is brought to you by Ground News, an incredible platform that brings all the world's media together in one place. More on them in just a bit. Today our story is going to take us to a surprising place in time, all the way back to Iran in the winter of 1979. But first, we're here to talk about man-made metal monsters that melt faces, and surely there could be none better than the V-280 Valor, the future of American victory. So without further ado, let me introduce you to America's answer to the question, is any amount of helicopter too much? The answer, the Bell V-280 Valor, which you won't be surprised to learn, says absolutely not. The V-280 Valor, first proposed by American military equipment manufacturer Bell in 2013, ground tested in 2015, and now undergoing evaluation for combat effectiveness by the US Marine Corps and the Joint Special Operations Command, or JSOC, is part of a plan that goes back decades. Look, we could all agree that being aware of the different perspectives, political perspectives, global perspectives, today is more important than ever before because each media outlet does seem to have their own agenda. Ground News is an incredible platform for getting up to date on the news because it brings all of the world's media into a single, easy-to-access location. This means you can see how different outlets with different biases are covering the same story. For example, currently Ground News has a story about a Russian advance that's happening in Ukraine, and when you see that story in Ground News, to the right of the article, they have this little graph which tells you which sites, which newspapers are reporting on it, and where they lie on the political spectrum. You just click on them, and it'll tell you how they are covering the story. But this isn't just politics-based. You can see outlets from all over the world and how they cover it as well, so you get a truly global perspective. Another thing Ground News do is something called blind spots, and that will highlight for you stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum or the other, so you'll get informed about a story that you might otherwise have missed. So go to ground.news/megaprojects and try it for yourself. It's a great way to stay better informed. Again, ground.news/megaprojects. And now back to today's video. A plan to replace the US military's aging fleet of Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk attack helicopters and CH-47 Chinook heavy lift cargo helicopters with a new breed of hybrid air vehicle. But why replace heavy lift and attack helicopters with a single new vehicle? The answer comes down to the shortcomings of helicopter technology and the advantages of turboprop designs. Combat helicopters have been in use as part of American special operations since the formation of the 1st Air Cavalry Brigade during Vietnam. But, and it pays us to say this, helicopters kinda suck. Helicopters have always been notoriously dangerous and deadly. Helicopter crews suffered among the highest casualty rates of any combat assignment in Vietnam, and this was simply down to their sensitivity to anything from enemy small arms fire to bad weather. From the 1970s on up to the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq in the early 2000s, American helicopters and their weaknesses were repeatedly the cause for defeat in major operations, like those that occurred during the Iran hostage crisis in 1980 and in Mogadishu in 1993. In operation after operation, helicopters proved a tactical liability when they came under fire or faced unexpected conditions. A new vehicle was needed, a vehicle that combines the vertical lift and carrier launchability of a helicopter with the cargo capacity, speed, and range of a smaller turboprop cargo plane. The new vehicle would have the advantages of a turboprop's beefier and faster blades and be less sensitive to weather, but have the agility of a chopper. The combined branches of the US military conceived the Future Vertical Lift (FVL) program, which was launched in the late 1990s to seek new alternatives to the use of traditional heavy-lift vehicles such as the C-130 or dual-rotor cargo helicopters like the Chinook. Until FVL, regular and special forces relied on heavy cargo planes such as C-130s to reach air bases, then attack and cargo helicopters to reach forward operating bases where many troops were deployed, sometimes for months at a time. Yet many of these forward operating areas lacked good conditions for helicopters, and there are not always runways. The US Marine Corps particularly lacked a way to move special operations units into and out of combat zones quickly. The idea was to conceive and build a heavy lift vehicle capable of vertical takeoff and landing, but which could cruise at relatively high altitudes at turboprop speeds, thus offering the flexibility and range for special operations, particularly in areas such as the Middle East, where environmental factors make helicopter operations difficult and dangerous. The program's earlier offspring, the M22 Osprey, had been a controversial and problematic design design that had failed to accomplish the US military's, and in particular the US Marine Corps' hopes for the program. The Osprey can indeed land and take off vertically, as well as turn its engines forward to cruise as a turboprop airplane. However, it's also heavy, unwieldy, and plagued with technical challenges and complications that make it too risky for combat operations. The Marines wanted a plane that was bigger than a Black Hawk or a Chinook, but also faster. And they wanted it to be tough enough to land in combat, drop a squad of Special Forces operators, and then rise above the battlefield to loiter and provide command and control before dropping again to scoop up its operators and fly them back to friendly territory. What Bell finally offered seemed to be exactly what the Marines were looking for. The V-280 Valor, a vertical takeoff and landing vehicle that was bigger than a helicopter but nimble like one and capable of far more range and speed than either the Osprey or any helicopter ever built. While it superficially resembles the MV-22 Osprey, the V-280 Valor is an evolutionary design that promises to be far more viable and cost-effective as the future of the FVL program. It's marginally faster than the Osprey, with a top speed of 590 km per hour, yet far lighter. This is due to an important number of innovations in its construction, which uses carbon fiber composite in a ribbed superstructure around the fuselage and along the wing structures. This makes the craft highly durable and still capable of carrying immense amounts of cargo and weaponry, in addition to soldiers. Also, unlike the unwieldy Osprey, the Valor is capable of changing the direction of force from its rotors without having to tilt the entire engine assembly up and down, saving on weight and complexity while making the craft far more reliable as well as safer and easier to service. While the Valor is smaller than the Osprey, this too has advantages. The US Marines and Army view the Valor as a potential combat aircraft, whereas the larger Osprey, capable of carrying 36 crew and passengers compared to just 18 for the Valor, is seen as too slow, lumbering, and complex for combat operations, making it suitable only for cargo and personnel transport outside of combat zones, a finding that did not please military brass who wanted a heavy-lift combat vehicle. The Valor is capable of taking off and landing with a full squad of US Marines or Delta Force operatives and landing in combat anywhere within over 900 miles, that's 1,420 kilometers as a radius, before returning to base with its crew and passengers. Now, missions are often defeated in the details. The Valor is intended to cut through the complexity and get the job done simply. Its superior range makes it capable of striking virtually anywhere in Central Asia, South America, or Africa from a US airbase in friendly territory or an aircraft carrier in international waters. For one-way ferry missions, its range can be extended to 2,400 miles, that's 3,900 kilometers, meaning it could very nearly touch all the way from New York City to San Francisco without refueling, something no other vertical lift cargo plane is capable of doing. Compare this to the Osprey's paltry 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometer ferry range, and you'll get an idea of why the US military is so excited about the Valor. The Valor is capable of a takeoff weight of up to 30 tons, which is a little more than half of the Osprey. This added range and flexibility also makes it possible for small units of Special Forces operators to quickly shuttle directly from their home bases to combat theaters, touching down only to refuel. As things currently stand, special operations teams like SEAL Team 6 often have to get creative if they want to deploy in a timely fashion in far-flung parts of the world. During the taking by Somali pirates of the Maersk, Alabama in 2008 and the subsequent kidnapping of Captain Richard Phillips as a hostage on a lifeboat, the US Navy called in the SEALs. But getting there proved a challenge. In order to make it to the Navy destroyer that had arrived on the scene, Navy SEALs had to be dropped from C-130s in a daring night parachute jump and then be picked up by dinghy from the sea. This was not just a little risky, even for the best trained amphibious special operators in the world. The Valor makes these units combat effective almost anywhere in the world within less than a day, without the need to catch rides on cargo planes from one military base to another, only then to be shuttled to forward operating bases or carriers to be deployed to combat, much less the need to jump out of a moving plane at night somewhere off the coast of Somalia. To complement its already impressive features, the V-280 Valor will be capable of auto-rotation, meaning that its blades will be able to keep the plane from falling out of the sky even if the engines are knocked out, a capability that makes helicopters operationally much safer than similar-sized planes, which require long stretches of flat ground on which to land. This also makes the V-280 far more survivable and recoverable in case of mechanical difficulties or combat damage, another huge plus for a combat vehicle. In principle, due to its streamlined design, a Valor could even carry a backup rotor assembly that could be field-fitted in an emergency, not something a helicopter can offer, and potentially critical in combat. This really is much more of a flying fighting vehicle, a sort of airborne tank, than just a mere helicopter. Its wings and blades are also high enough off the ground that troops walking underneath them will be able to pass freely without fear of being sliced and diced. This is also good for the Valor's 2 potential door gunners who will have wide fields of fire, another of the limitations that made the Osprey unsuitable for combat use. The Valor will have 2 additional cargo hooks, together capable of carrying 10 tons of cargo at an impressive speed of 170 miles per hour or 280 kilometers per hour. Bell also claims it can be fitted to launch rockets, drones, and cruise missiles, all without interference from the rotors. It will also come equipped with seats that can wirelessly charge ground troops' equipment, such as night vision goggles and radios, and it will also feature heads-up displays or HUDs on all the interior windows, allowing special forces to take advantage of computerized mapping and targeting software and sensor data from within the craft, potentially allowing it to operate as something like a mobile special operations command and control center. The Valor will be able to take off vertically from a carrier, fly at over 6,000 feet to a target, drop its complement of troops, and then rise above the combat zone to loiter, command and control, and support its commandos before dropping back down again, scooping them up, and roaring off into the sky. Such capabilities might have proven useful for SEAL Team 6 in May of 2011, when they were forced to abandon one of 2 Sikorsky UH-60 Blackhawks used in the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound in Abbottabad in Pakistan. The Black Hawk suffered a structural failure after making a hard landing due to higher than expected temperatures, just 17 Fahrenheit above expected, which is a problem that the military admits is common with their existing fleet of special operations choppers. In this case, 2 additional Chinook helicopters had to be on standby and were deployed to evacuate both commandos and prisoners, as well as intel such as computers and documents. Again, the complexity of chopper-based operations has to be highlighted. Extra units must always be sent, as helicopter operations have a tendency to get bogged down by any potential mechanical or combat-related damage. If temperatures just 17 degrees higher than expected can cause one of your 2 mission-critical helicopters to fail, you got really big problems. That was the feeling among military brass, who, just as they had done in 1980, looked to new ideas such as the V-280 Valor for the answer to their troubles. The Valor was not coincidentally announced just 2 years after the assault on bin Laden's compound. If military brass have their way, we'll see this new hybrid in the sky by the mid-2020s. But what do you think about the US military's shiny new doohickey? Is it another costly boondoggle like the Osprey, or a soaring bird of prey and a worthy successor to the Black Hawk? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching.